Netflix generally puts out straight up duty most of the time, but every so often they get a little gift handed to them. This one is by a director by the name of Jeremy Saulnier. This guy just doesn't miss. He makes bangers.
This had some Jack Reacher vibes.
I thought the same thing. It's funny. This is basically like an action thriller, more like also drama. It meanders through a couple different genres, but this isn't your typical revenge action film. I'm only bringing that up because if you go back and watch the trailer, you'll see it can be misleading. Like they make it look like a straight up action movie.
Yeah.
And that's probably Netflix is doing.
That might have actually upset some people because it wasn't fast paced at all. The pacing felt nice. This was a 2-hour movie that I wasn't like, man, is this thing over yet? I was entertained the whole time.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. The tension in this movie is like really high, even though you kind of like know where it's going to go because you've seen movies like it. This is a former Marine. He's riding through some bumblefuck town. This guy who we don't know anything about, he's just biking along this road and he gets rammed by a police cruiser and thrown off his bike. And right away, these cops are being like particularly aggressive to him. And you think it's because he's a black man in like a sundown town or whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, I get where this is going. But that is not what this movie's about. And it turns out that he's riding through town to post bail of $36,000.
He's riding to town, yeah. We don't know where he came from, actually, because he came from the city.
Yeah.
And he's just riding his bike. And Reacher takes a bus. He rides, this motherfucker rides his bike everywhere.
Yeah, and we don't even know he's a retired Marine yet. I mean, we do, in this little altercation with the cops because they see his tattoos. He has $36,000 on him, and he's going to post bail for his cousin who's arrested for possession or whatever. And he is the victim of civil forfeiture. The police basically take his money on suspicion of whatever the fuck. They can just say whatever they want.
Suspicion of nothing.
It turns out that there's this whole higher up, I don't want to say conspiracy, just corruption going on within this town.
Yeah, corruption is the proper word. It's not a conspiracy as we find out in the end of the movie. It's just corruption. When the person in charge is corrupt and everybody else is afraid of their livelihood, everyone just goes along and nobody does anything about it, and it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Civil forfeiture is a very real thing, and it is a very fucked up thing. And
it's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's not just money. They can they'll take your car, they'll take your house.
Yeah.
They can take anything they want if they think it's tied to illegal goings-ons.
Yeah. To get back the seized property, owners must prove it was not involved in criminal activity. I think it's proven all over the place is that the police act as a strong arm of the ruling class.
They're the enforcer. When you disobey a law that some politician legislates, they send a man with a gun to threaten you with violence unless you conform to their rules.
We see examples of police overreach or police brutality or whatever all the time now, and it's out in the open.
The Supreme Court has ruled they have no actual duty to do anything for you. Police are a necessary evil for a larger society, like urban areas. Definitely necessary, because the more densely populated an area is, the more crime you're going to have, the more you're going to need some sort of adjudication to break things up. And you need to have somebody that is responsible for that.
The thing is that police in democratic societies are supposed to uphold the rule of law and protect civil liberties. In a lot of authoritarian or fascistic systems, they could be used as tools of state repression. And I personally feel and would argue that we're seeing that more and more, where they are being used as tools of repression.
A good police officer will uphold the spirit of the law. There's spirit and rule where we don't need to be incarcerating all these people for all these stupid laws we have.
I didn't mean to get overly political, but it's hard to avoid with a movie like this because this movie speaks to that very thing. It's like...
It does, absolutely. As somebody who's been to jail for no reason other than the cop wanted to take me to jail, I can confirm, cops can flex their authority on anybody they want for whatever reason and generally can get away with it.
I think it was a really smartly written movie because we are inundated with revenge films or action films.
This was brilliantly written.
All these action movies end up in the same place. Like, you watch the highly trained person fuck up all these people who fucked around and found out, right? But this was different because this is not just straight action.
It was very restrained, and I loved it.
And it's a much more realistic take on this genre that we've seen so much, probably too much now. We need to give it a little bit of breathing room. There's John Wick shows and spin-offs and this and that. It's like, let's take a break. You guys can make money and make other stuff.
Yeah, high-paced action for 2 hours straight is starting to get a little dull.
And this really like lets you, it lets the plot simmer. The way they reveal like who he is and like,
oh, that was so brilliant.
What he's capable of. There's the altercation outside of the police station, and while they're inside, she's trying, the secretary or the cop who they treat as a secretary, she's trying to get like the Wi-Fi back to look his shit up.
Never saw combat? Okay, I'll go on out there.
Yeah.
What's MC map?
Oh, turns out he's like a highly skilled martial artist and trains Marines on like close quarters combat.
This motherfucker's on the wiki page. 10 out of 10 genius writing.
It just felt like way more realistic to me.
Well, and even the action sequence there, it felt real. Like
he just disarms
when you get in like a John Wick movie, like he does shit so fast, like, oh my God, like this guy, like, but he was slow and controlled. He's like, I don't need to do anything fast. I know how this works.
I said earlier that this movie was very tense to me, like throughout the whole thing, because I genuinely didn't know whether this dude was going to make it out of this alive or not. In lots of these films, you know, the hero's going to win. I was genuinely like, oh, I actually don't know what's going to happen. A lot of times in these types of movies, all the extra characters just feel like NPCs, either there to die or deliver some sort of exposition. All the characters in this movie, straight down to the fucked up cops, like actually had like personality. They felt like real people.
And because everybody played a role in the plot, because it is a small town and you're kind of forced to when it's that sort of corruption.
There's just a lot to this movie that you understand because it's written well. And the things that you don't learn, like, don't really need to be known. It's just kind of there to add to our main character or anybody else. Everybody in the movie sort of served a purpose. They weren't just there to like get shot in the head or whatever.
Aaron Pierre and Don Johnson's dialogue was, I mean, that was chef's kiss. Like the way that they started talking to each other and the way they finished talking to each other by the end of the movie, you get this back and forth, like, like every 20 or 30 minutes when they get back into dialogue together, they're just quipping each other with shit they've said to each other, and they're playing this long chess game of like escalation, de-escalation, because he's trying to tell them the acronyms about pace and everything. And it's just, I mean, it is very well written.
Terry says this one line towards the end of the movie. I don't know where my cousin is. I'm not educated enough about the afterlife, so I just know that while I'm here, I gotta haunt these motherfuckers myself. That shit was so gangster. I just thought it was a really like grounded take on this genre of film. But even the action sequences, there's not much more action than just like jujitsu and him shooting some smoke grenades at people.
And the most gruesome part is when he takes that dude's arm to his knee and splits it backwards. But that was good. That was about it.
And when he beats the living fuck out of
I thought he was going to kill that guy. I thought he smashed his skull in, but he just cracked his eye socket open, basically.
I originally thought it was like going to lean into like the racism part of it. And I'm glad it didn't, because while systemic racism does exist in our country, and it is a major problem in this country, there is just corruption at every level of power everywhere.
Yep.
And like we were talking about earlier in the podcast, things with messages. If any movie is going to be quote unquote woke or have an agenda or a message, I'm glad it's one that literally everyone can sort of relate to and understand.
This was the last parish with a police station. They were stretched thin, and so they were trying to make ends meet, and that got them in a hole that they didn't need to be in, of immorality. And most of them didn't even want to be in there in the first place. Some of them were super comfortable, like pigs and shit.
Yeah, for sure.
But most of them, you could tell by the end of it, they were like, we did not like where we were. We're glad we're out of there. Thank you for helping us.
Yeah.
So just an overall great message.
I agree. The only parts of the movie that I could even say were like kind of tedious were the legal ones, but those are intentionally slower to show you that the legal system in real life ensnares disenfranchised people in corrupt bullshit. What happened to him is like an insurmountable situation for 99.999% of people in real life. This is a movie, it's a fantasy, so of course he's a Marine with hand-to-hand combat skills and will fuck everybody up. But in real life, you get your shit seized, good luck getting that shit back. She explains it to him too, and like earlier in the movie, like you're going to go through a year or more of legal proceedings that you're going to end up paying more than the money that was taken from you to get back, and it's just not going to be worth it, and it's a headache, and you're just fucked. So good luck, have a nice day, move on with your life. And that's what happens. I think it's cool that this movie like sort of exposed that. Whether how many people are going to watch this movie, I don't know, because it's just on Netflix and it doesn't really seem to have a lot of like noise surrounding it. I wish it did, because it's a great movie.
It's just a great movie. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it's very tense the whole way through, and it's engaging, and it's hilarious at times.
I thought it spoke to a lot of these things that we deal with all the time that are in our faces, that most people probably don't want to face or admit to. It's not just about race. It's not just about, it's about class, and that's really it. It's like it's the ruling class versus everybody else, and the police are unfortunately largely a strong arm of the ruling class in this country and probably elsewhere. So yeah, love the movie. Thought it was fantastic. It's got a 6.9 on IMDb. This might be my favorite movie we've watched this year. So
I think this is my favorite so far. Yeah.
It was shockingly good. Like, I knew it was going to be good because I'm familiar with the director, but it's like way better than I could have expected. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9.
It
was amazing. Yeah, great movie. Highly recommended. Go watch it.
Oh, yeah. Highly recommended. If you haven't seen Rebel Ridge, folks, run and watch this as soon as humanly possible. If you have a TV, watch it. Figure it out if you don't have Netflix. There's ways, trust me. It's a very, very good movie. If you have seen it, leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought about it. Don Johnson, by the way, man, does he get better with age or what? He's like...
He is a great actor.
What a good villain.